ultimately, these things are not what we call in Christianity. These additional laws are not for us. They were for the Jews at the time, but they're not for us. So when you're telling me that within Christianity we allow you to have sex with slaves and beat slaves, that's not what we do.
Saint Paul.
Because did Jesus do that? No, he didn't. So.
Well, technically he did, because he's God and he never condemns it whatsoever. So when you don't condemn something, then by default you associate it with the action.
No, that's
well,
not
accurate. That's how it is in Islam. من رضي بفعل قوم فكان منهم. Then
if you don't condemn something, then it's okay.
Then no. If you don't condemn something, then you associate it with the action, right? Because the Prophet said, "Man رضي بفعل قوم."
Did Muhammad ever condemn cannibalism, for example?
Yeah.
Where and when?
In the Hadith literature, you're not permitted to eat human beings, right? So
and Muhammad said this.
Yeah, he did.
Do you know which book I can find this in? Is this in Bukhari? Where is
no,
this?
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, by consensus of all scholars, and in.
But Muhammad himself didn't say this.
Well, he did. Well, look, in terms of not eating human beings, there is clear-cut hadith that prohibits this. The only real explanation that I've read in fiqh books is in a state of war, and if a soldier is about to die of hunger, then he's allowed to eat like a human being. But eating human beings.
That's my problem with Islam, man. Like everything is not allowed unless it's like something.
No, but alcohol is haram. Alcohol is haram. فمن اضطر غير باغ ولا عاد فلا إثم عليه, right?
Okay.
So those who are forced to do something.
This is a slightly different point, right? But my overall statement here is that we in Christianity are not allowed to have slaves or have sex with slaves, which is why historically you would notice that the cultures that outlawed slavery were Christian.
Those were the liberals, as I mentioned. But bro,
no, because as far back as the 9th century with Charlemagne the Great,
bro, if you refer
he wasn't a liberal and he outlawed slavery in the Frankish kingdoms.
Okay, if you refer to the letters attributed to Peter, Saint Peter, if you refer to those two letters, in one of the letters is mentioned that the slave must submit himself even to the cruel slave owners. So even though slave owners that are cruel, he has to submit himself to them. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Holy Prophet, he forbade even slapping one slave, let alone submitting himself to a cruel slave master.
Right. Okay. So
you're doing very well, by the way. I like this. This is good, eh? What's your name? Mustafa. Mustafa what? Aqil. MashaAllah. The reason why I'm not intervening is because he's saying all the right things. You know, keep going, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I didn't hear a response. Sorry. Again. Sorry,
please go ahead.
So in Islam, you can't even hit your slave. However, I do believe that you are allowed to kill your slave.
Corporal punishment is different than torturing a slave.
Okay, so why would you even mention that supposedly you can't hit your slave?
Killing the slave.
I mean, in terms of qasas, like for example, if the slave.
They talk about jald, but what do you call it?
Even like had.
Do you guys want to talk amongst yourselves, or are you doing it with me?
Like for example, if a slave commits fornication, the slave master has to actually carry out like punishment, like corporal.
No, but hold on. Sorry, because remember in the Quran it says that what do you call it? That the slaves have half of the mu'min al-adhab. So they wouldn't get they wouldn't get a death penalty for that.
But even if they kill someone else?
No. What do you call it for?
Brother, speak to him.
Yeah,
I'm not entirely sure what we're talking about.
He's doing a good job.
When it comes to...
I'm letting him talk.
If you guys want to talk, go ahead and talk.
I can make mistakes, so sometimes clarifications have to be made. It's not an issue. The point being is...
if you're trying to compare the treatments...
The qisas, you'd have to have the two witnesses, and it has to be from the...
There's no competition. Because ultimately, we Christians do not allow slavery. So whenever you have,
which verse in the Bible abrogates slavery?
So for example, we say that Christ came to set the captives free.
Captives free from what?
Free generally, from sinful.
Sinning, yeah. That's
However, just as you follow the Sunnah of Muhammad, right? There are certain things that he did not say, but simply acted out. We also follow the Sunnah, if you will, of Christ. Christ didn't own any slaves. He didn't beat any slaves.
No, but
so why should we own slaves?
But he never abrogated any slaves, though. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he freed numerous slaves.
He freed numerous slaves, but then do you wonder why he had so many slaves? Because he kept purchasing more.
How many did he have? What do you mean? When he died,
how can he
never had any slaves.
Sorry?
When he died, he never had any slaves in his possession.
Yeah, because he gave more to his family members.
Oh, no, he released them all.
I don't know about that.
Look,
Bukhari,
he did.
If you insist,
It's in Sahih Bukhari, and also when it comes to my sources.
how did he have so many slaves? He was purchasing them throughout his entire life, or taking them as captives.
Well,
so ultimately,
it depends on which
if
context.
Christ did the same thing, then you can say as the case somewhere in Christianity for us to have slaves.
No, but
but if Christ did not perform his actions, then you can't say that.
You cannot remove Christ from the Christological understanding within Christianity, because
absolutely.
Yeah. So all those laws in the Old Testament that talk about how you should treat your slave, those have been like accredited and permitted by Christ, right? Because he's part of the triune God. So you cannot like condemn that and say, oh, Moses is not perfect, Moses made a mistake. Solomon wasn't perfect, Solomon made a mistake.
So,
Solomon owned slaves, David owned slaves.
For example,
Moses said, Moses, he basically ordered the killing of everyone except to keep the young females.
Yeah, we talked about it. Numbers 31, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if
and to do what with them? Those girls, those young girls.
to keep them for yourselves. But then if you look at Deuteronomy 24, if you want to have to, you have to marry them first.
Okay.
So again, like
so you've massacred their brothers, their fathers, their uncles, the non-virgin females. When did Muhammad ever permit the killing of children and of women?
We were talking about massacring people and then taking the women as slaves.
Yeah, but Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he only permitted to attack combatants in war, right? He never allowed the killing of children. In the Bible, what is it allowed to killing children?
There's that whole that they are from them.
Innahum minhum, that hadith, it has explanations.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so carry on.
Because essentially, they were attacking at night, and there was some what's it called?
Why didn't they wait till daytime so they could differentiate between who's a man or a woman?
It's not a number.
They couldn't see.
So why didn't they wait a few hours?
Sorry?
ليس بأمر.
ليس بأمر.
إنهم منهم ليس بأمر.
Let them carry on, man.
ليس بأمر. It's not Amr.
Hey, man.
It wasn't. Well, basically, look, it is kind of like difficult to keep up. But the point being is that those individuals who were killed in that siege, they were seen as casualties of that war, not as deserving victims, not as deserving of being killed by consensus of scholars.
Okay.
Which scholar has said that yes, the mere fact that children and women were killed in that siege, that was a good thing, right? Sahaba, companions of the Prophet ﷺ, are not infallible, right? The Prophet is infallible.
But Muhammad is the one who gave the command to allow them to do that at that time.
He never gave a command to specifically target children and donkeys and whatever, like in the Bible.
But what he could have done is simply say wait till the morning.
What?
He could have said wait till the morning so we can differentiate between who's a woman and who's not a woman and
It's
child.
war. Al-harb al-khud'a, like war is kind of a
Deception.
It's deception. It's based on deception. I mean, you can't just wait on your enemy to sleep and eat and all of that and maybe do a bit
catch them right at the break of dawn.
I mean, come on.
When they just woke up.
Huh?
Catch them right at the break of dawn when they just woke up so you can tell who's the man and who's the woman and who's the child.
Those kind of battle statistics or tactics are not our area of speciality. So the one who's the general.
If Muhammad ultimately didn't want to kill women and children, then he just told them to wait until they could see.
Based on that, someone could also say they shouldn't even have used horses because someone could get trampled and whatever. I mean, this is war, so it's warfare. So obviously innocent people can die.
So ultimately, in your paradigm, it's okay to kill women
No,
and
it's not.
children.
It's not okay.
In the right circumstance.
No, it's not. No.
So wait. What Muhammad did wasn't okay.
No, look, it wasn't intentional. It was a mistake.
Okay, but
right?
he should have not told them to attack them, right?
Why should he not have?
Because it's not okay.
But did he tell him to attack them? Did he tell him to attack them?
No. I mean, he never specifically ordered the attack on children and women.
So
there's no way to be found.
So his soldiers performed an action of their own volition without contacting him.
That happened also with Khalid bin Walid.
Yes.
Like for example, when the conquering of Mecca happened,
yes.
Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Allahumma inni abra'u ilayka ma fa'ala Khalid." I seek refuge to God from what Khalid has done.
Okay.
Companions can make mistakes.
But then the second time in that battle we're talking about currently, he didn't say that same thing. He said they were from them. So he sort of dismissed the idea that they had killed.
It
wasn't. He said, "I did not order this."
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he rebuke them, say you were wrong for this or anything?
By saying by saying I did not order this, and then it's a rebuke.
Well, no, it's a statement of facts. But he's not actually like criticizing their behavior.
No. A statement of fact can be I did not order this, or for example, saying with harshness. it depends on the tone.
Did he punish them? Did he like derank them or anything, or just told them okay, whatever?
I don't know if that happened.
Okay.
I mean, the same thing with Khalid. He wasn't deranked either.
Fundamentally,
the Prophet just
you
said that.
seem to accept the same thing that you're critiquing the Bible for when Muhammad does it.
No.
My takeaway would be that if you look at the entire Old Testament, things like slavery and the killing of women and children, whatever, are not things that are encouraged, but God can certainly provide punishment unto people with these things. Because, for example, the children of Israel are also taken into slavery by Babylon. And God is described as raising up Babylon to come and punish them for not following him. The view of slavery, even in the Old Testament, is not a good thing. It's not like a right or a privilege. It's a punishment.
Okay, forget about the idea of encouraging or not. In the Bible, there's a direct order. Like, to even wipe out donkeys. Like, God knows what the donkeys have done. But the point being is that this is a total and clear extermination.
Okay.
This idea of ibadah, extermination, is nowhere, like, it's not Islamic concept.
So you're talking about an event that occurred, right, in the Old Testament. But you have the same exact event occurring in your Quran.
Where?
For example, if you look at so right in the Bible, right before this happens, right, there's slaves in Egypt, right?
Slaves in Egypt, okay.
They should have been slaves in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Your Quran talks about this in Surah 43. Like I think it's like from verse 46 to 55. It talks about the idea.
43 Surah Zukhruf. There's no war verses at all there. There's no war verses at all there.
No. This is not war verse. You're talking about killing women and children donkeys.
The Surah Zukhruf doesn't exist.
Oh, hold on. Allah supposedly drowns the entirety of Egypt because after bringing Musa there with his miracles, Pharaoh laughed at him and told him that if he was from God, he should have come there with angels and clad in gold. And everyone agreed with Pharaoh, so Allah drowned them all. So now, when Allah drowned,
what does it mean?
Look at Surah.
Bring out your phone inside.
You bring it up, right?
You're the one who's bringing out the
Surah 43.
Okay,
Surah 43, 46 to 55. So Allah drowns them all. Now, when Allah drowns them all, is he drowning donkeys and kids and men and women?
How I mean,
ultimately he is.
As for
he's talking about divine punishment. He's not talking about Sharia punishment.
Yeah.
So go back to the command issue that you were talking about.
If you're having
divine punishment is different from Sharia punishment.
God commanding people to go and kill certain individuals.
He's conflating between two things.
Who have wronged God, right? You have to also keep in mind that God does the same thing back to these same people when they disobey him.
Divine judgment versus human judgment.
Okay, so the distinction that has to be made was, for example, like with Noah's flood.
Yes.
Or with the flood, for example, the flood here mentioned in
Surah 43, yes.
So this is like a divine punishment, like where God is wiping them out. But here you're talking about a punishment for a certain group of people.
Because God is ordering it. So it will still be divine punishment.
Yeah, but God here is...
He's not ordering it, he's carrying it out.
Yeah, and like in the case of Noah's flood and the flood that occurred with the Egyptians, here God is actually the one who's carrying out the action. But with the case of the Amalekites and the other groups that were massacred, those were human beings that were told to go out and wipe them out.
Right.
But it is still a judgment from God. So divine means things of God. So if God is the one ordering it, it doesn't matter if it's like fire from heaven, a flood, or human beings.
Category mistake fallacy.
The people of Noah, or the people of Moses at the time that were wiped out this way, they were the actual perpetrators, right?
The same thing with the Amalekites.
They were the descendants of
He's equivocating.
But they're also the descendants of people who what's it called?
So they themselves were not like.
Ask him to get to the point.
They themselves were not completely distinct from those people who they descended from. The people who descended from hated God, and so did they. And the Bible even says that God will revisit the sins of the fathers upon the third and fourth generation for those who hate Him. So if your ancestors hated God and you still hate God today, you can still be liable for that punishment.
What, even the sheep, camels, and donkeys?
Again, your God apparently drowned Egypt, killed the people of Lot. I'm sure they had sheep. I'm sure they had camels. I'm sure they had donkeys.
So are you speaking? Are you speaking to others now?
You were doing it first, so please calm down.
No, I don't mind. Do you want to speak to me?
I don't mind either.
Do you want to speak to me?
What do you want? Are we done? Or
it's fine. You've done really well. You've done really well, mashallah. Done very good.
Yeah, you want to take over?
Yeah, let me just say a couple of words to him. Because I've never met him before. They told me to come to him and speak to him. So.
Oh, okay.
Hey.
but it was a really interesting discussion. I really appreciate it.
Fair enough.
Well,
when Allah does it, it's cool, but then when God does it in the Bible, it's not cool.
No, because our issue with this is that you're making like a false equivocation. Because one example is like basically a total damnation being sent down from Allah Azza wa Jalla, from God Almighty. And the other example is like a had or
punitive law,
like a
punishment,
a corporal punishment being carried out by human beings.
Okay,
so
you're
that's like me, for example.
Okay.
Let's say I go to like, like let's say I go to Holland and then I go to the red light district and all these people are sinners. Then I go and I pick up random kids and whatever. I'm stoning you as well. I'm lashing you as well, and making this like a complete kind of.
But in that instance, it is you doing this of your own volition, not Allah sending you to do it. Correct?
No. Allah ordered to punish adulterers and fornicators.
Okay.
Yeah, so Allah is ordering it, but what I'm doing is I'm making like a willy-nilly. Everyone's getting a go. Everyone's getting punished.
Okay, well that's not what's occurring here in the Bible.
I know.
God is distinctly telling them to go and wipe them out. So it doesn't matter from our paradigm if God chooses to perform this action via a divine flood or fire and brimstone from heaven, or by sending people to go and do it. If God has the authority to enact the action, then it's all good with us.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I take over from here? Is that all right? Okay, that's a very interesting kind of taxonomy that you've created for yourself. Yeah, where you're saying that basically what Allah does or what God does in terms of his punishments that he carries out himself is equivalent to the imperatives and the commands that he gives in the Bible or the Quran and other scripture. You've conflated between the two categories.
Wait. That's not what I said.
Okay, what is what you said?
I simply said this. It doesn't matter when God is carrying out a punishment,
or
if he does it via a divine flood or fire and brimstone, or if he orders people to do it.
Okay.
Ultimately, if the actions of God are being carried out in the area of punishment, then it is still valid.
Can I ask a question?
Because
go ahead.
These same people that we're talking about, the Israelites, the Bible talks about thousands of years after this event occurred, that God raises Babylon to punish them. Okay. So if God is capable of acting divinely to raise a nation to come and punish the chosen people, then God can still carry the actions out using people as the conduits, even if it doesn't require him sending down fire from heaven.
Is there a category distinction between an imperative that God gives to human beings to carry out versus the things that he carries out directly, or not?
I mean, obviously there is a distinction.
Is there a distinction?
Because one is a first-hand carrying out by God, and the other one is through a proxy, like a human being,
excellent.
For example.
Okay.
But they are still both from God, so they're still valid.
Accepted that it's both from God. We think everything is from God. Yeah. But
everything.
Yes, everything is from God. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. You don't will except that God wills, right? So we do believe that everything goes back to the will of God. That's why we say Insha'Allah, MashaAllah, all those words, meaning the will of God is always in everything, right? We do agree with that. However,
cannibalism?
Pardon? Yes, everything is good and the bad, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we believe that everything goes back to the will of God. Nothing happens except through the will of God. That's not something which is. That's not a problem, because that's something which Christians also accept. In fact, especially if you go into the Calvinist school of thought, it's even more pronounced. They talk about divine predestination. Calvin wrote a whole tract on it. I can give you the references. That's something else.
I'm not a Calvinist, first of all.
No problem.
And I'm not even sure Calvinists would hold to the idea that evil comes from God.
Yes, it does. Of course they do. They mention it. Augustine mentions it in his book. I don't think you know your tradition very well. Let's go back to the point, though.
Can you show me that, please?
Yeah. I can.
That's fine.
Isaiah 45.
No, but it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yep.
This is. Sorry. Let me just answer him. Let me. It's fine.
Go ahead.
What I'm saying to you now, if you've studied the basics of Christian doctrine.
The basics, you say?
Yeah, the basics of Christian doctrine. If I ask you the question, what is the differentiation between Arminianism and Calvinism?
I am not familiar with Arminianism.
Oh, so there you have it. You don't know the basics of your doctrines.
Hold on now. Calvinism
Why are you
is
making
a
those
relatively new
facial
idea.
Because it's not involved in the conversation.
Wait a second. Calvinism is a relatively new idea.
Stay on
You're triggered. You're triggered.
I'm not triggered.
You're triggered.
I'm just saying, stay on topic.
Over here.
So what's the difference between Arminianism? What is the difference between Arminianism and Calvinism and modalism?
How does that involve?
Ask me then.
Wait, you're bringing in modalism now.
Modalism.
Calvinism is a relatively new idea.
Tell me what's the differentiation between all those three
things? How can that be the foundationalism of Christianity?
I'm not saying it's foundation. I didn't say that.
You just said 1 second ago.
No, I've just asked you a question.
I know the foundations of my faith.
Yeah, when it comes to the will of, excuse me, when it comes to the will of God, there are three main schools of thought in Christianity.
Okay.
All right, they are Calvinism, okay, represented by John Calvin, modalism, represented by Monila, and Armenianism. I'm asking you, since you're talking about the will of God and the actions carried out by him, tell the audience, the Muslims here and the non-Muslims and all that, what is the differentiation between all these three schools of thought?
I have not looked into it.
You haven't looked into it, you don't know?
Well, yes, I don't.
You don't know?
I'm aware of the Calvinist school of thought, but not the Monist.
So you haven't studied it?
Studied the other two? No, I have not.
You haven't.
Again,
so good.
What does that have to do with the idea?
Excuse me.
That you just
Excuse me.
that everything comes from Allah,
Yeah, I'll tell you.
including evil.
I'm answering your question.
That means that you have an evil God.
I'm answering your question. Excuse me. Let me finish this. Let me answer your question.
I just want to read this.
No, please. Let me speak to him now. Yeah?
Okay,
let me finish.
Well, I mean,
excuse me.
You jump in because
No.
This is the last thing I'm going to say.
I know you do wanna circumnavigate these questions. If I were you, I'd want to do the same thing. If I were you, I'd want to do the same thing.
You were there talking to him when he was speaking.
No, but he was welcoming it.
The same courtesy.
No, I don't need to.
I'm going to cite one verse and I'm leaving.
Go ahead.
Okay, God in the Bible says, in Isaiah 45, I am the Lord and there's none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, bro.
Oh, hold on a second there. But before you run away, does that say that God is the origin of evil or God can create evil? Two different things.
Okay, so let's go back to the point.
Let's hear it.
You're talking, you asked a question. I said that
God evil.
No, I didn't say that's not what you asked. Everyone is you didn't ask that question before.
What's the question?
I said to you before, right? Everything goes back to the will of God, and I quoted a verse in the Quran that says, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. Excuse me, let me finish.
Okay,
I said from one perspective, you can say that everything goes back to the will of God. Then you said, then you started making it an Islam specific. Excuse me.
Right?
Yeah, you made the cannibalism example. Yeah. And I told you it's not an Islam specific issue. And I said to you, why is that the case? If you look at Christianity, there's three distinct schools of thought. Okay, and these three schools
there's probably more, but okay, sure.
No, there of course there's more, but these are the three main ones that scholars speak about in the academy, for example, right? There's three distinct schools of thought: Calvinism, Monalism, and Armenianism.
And in Islam, because again, we're talking about Islam. You said everything goes back to Allah.
Yeah,
I asked you, does cannibalism go back to Allah?
Yeah,
And you said yes.
We're saying in one sense it does, and so in Calvinism the same thing applies. In Armenianism, look, you have to understand that in Monalism it does as well.
So you're going to answer a question.
So look, you don't understand. The problem is this: is that the issue is I'm speaking to a Christian and he doesn't even know his own religion.
Again,
that's the issue.
I'm asking you. Look, is Allah evil?
No, we don't believe Allah is evil. Allah is not evil.
And the
excuse me,
evil
comes from
Allah.
comes back.
So if Allah is the origin of good and evil,
okay, excuse me.
Is he good?
Let me answer your question, right? Since you don't know what you're talking about, let me answer your question.
Okay, well,
all right, excellent.
You said the origin.
Since you don't know what you're talking about, since you don't, okay, you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
So let me just try to excuse me.
Just now?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Do you want to listen?
Just to confirm.
Do you want to listen? Because you're uneducated. Clearly, he's uneducated. Look, you're
good and evil.
Would you like me to answer? Correct. Yeah, we believe that.
Awesome. Okay.
Can I?
So Allah is.
What is this? What is this? It's a monologue.
Allah is good.
Why are you afraid? Are you triggered?
Hold on.
Are you afraid that he doesn't want me to talk?
No.
It's clear that he doesn't want me to talk.
Allah is good. Correct.
Do you want to time it?
Because he's the
origin. Do you want to time it? Do you want to time it?
What do you guys want? Timing or not?
Yeah, time it. If you say your thing, I say my thing. If you can't have the conversation.
Fair enough.
Okay.
What you want?
I'll give you one more chance. If you can't handle it, we'll do a time.
If you want time, that's fine.
We'll do one more chance, and if you can't speak properly, and let me speak and then finish, and I'll let you speak and finish.
I go first. Again, is
Allah
good?
Yes, we believe Allah is good.
He's the origin of goodness.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
You'll ask another question.
Why is Allah good?
We believe goodness is one of the intrinsic attributes of God. He's Al-Bar.
Awesome,
we believe that.
Awesome.
Good.
Now, evil comes from this goodness, correct?
No, we don't believe that.
But you just said that.
No, I didn't just say that. Let me explain. Let me explain what evil is.
Go ahead.
There's something called theodicy. Do you know what theodicy is?
Not familiar.
Not familiar. This is the problem. I'm speaking. Excuse me.
Wait.
Let me finish.
So
let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. No, let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. The problem is this. The problem is I'm speaking to a person who has not studied his own religion, has not studied the academic material on the topic. Theodicy are theories relating to evil and sovereignty and the will of God. Now let me tell you something, right? Theories of evil in religion. Augustine has written.
Islam.
No, it's not in Islam.
Islam. I asked you an Islamic question.
Yeah, I know.
And you're not quoting
I'm explaining to you something.
Augustine, in case you didn't know, is not an Islamic scholar. So yeah, carry on. Islam.
Are you okay?
Islam.
Are you okay?
Islam.
Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?
I'm waiting.
Are you okay?
Right? Because if you ask a question about the Bible, I'm not going to quote Al-Albani for you.
What is Augustine's view on theodicy?
Again.
And evil.
Islam Is
What is it to you?
God evil? Please.
I said
ahead.
no. Do you understand English or not?
Okay.
Does this guy understand English?
Awesome. Wait.
Okay, yeah.
Everyone listening.
What is evil?
So,
What is evil?
He just
What is
said
evil?
that good and evil come from Allah.
Yeah, what is evil?
I said it's Allah good. He
Yeah.
said yes.
What
It's
is evil?
intrinsic attributes.
So what is
and
evil?
I asked him
What is
then,
evil?
does the evil
What is evil?
come from
What is
Allah
evil?
who is good? And he
Okay.
says no.
Okay,
But
well, hold
don't
on.
forget,
What is
his
no? I didn't
earlier
say that.
Yes, you did say no.
No, hold on,
It's
hold
on
on.
camera.
No,
We're gonna
let
see
me
when you
explain,
get
let
home.
me-
Pause.
Do you want me to explain my position or not?
That's fine. Go ahead. But he said that the evil does not come from Allah who is good.
That's
But
not what I said,
Prior
actually.
to that, he said that
No, I didn't.
evil anger comes from Allah.
Let me explain myself. God, Allah is good. Yes, we believe that's an intrinsic attribute of God.
Okay, awesome.
What is evil? I take the view that evil is the lacking of good. It's deprivation. That's why I take the view. Privation.
Interesting.
That's the view that I take.
Privation,
That's the
good.
same view of Augustine and Thomas Aquinas and Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim.
Okay.
Yes, it's a view of, that's what I'm saying, it's a view in Christianity and a view in Islam. It's not an Islam specific issue. Excuse me, let me finish. So what is evil? Evil is the lacking of good. Like for example, you've got the sun that's shining light upon us, right? So good in this analogy would be the bright light or the rays. And evil would be the darkness that doesn't come about if there's no rays. That's my view on evil. So in other words, if you're asking me the question, does evil come from God? In one sense, of course it does, because God is responsible for all things that exist. But evil doesn't exist in my worldview. That's the point. Do you understand? Evil doesn't exist as a substrate. You can't put evil under a microscope. So going back to the point, if you're asking a question about does evil exist, so I'm saying to you, if there are theodicies in Islam and Christianity, both religions, which have different ideas. Within Islam, there's different ideas. Within Christianity, there's different ideas on evil and theodicy. This is not a point where you could basically have a different view to me and be in my religion, and you can have the same view and be in different religion. It's not a point that differentiates Christian from Muslim. Do you understand the point? What I'm responding to you by saying is, what you done is a category mistake fallacy. What you done when you were talking to the other guy was you're saying that it's the same if God carries out a punishment himself as it is if he commands it. I'm saying no, that's a category mistake fallacy. You are able to see and demarcate and distinguish between the two categories. If God tells me to go and not eat pork, for example, or not have sexual intercourse before marriage, that's a command. Do you understand? Whereas if he drowns people because they were disobedient, that's him carrying out judgment. I see a differentiation. Yes, both of them go back to the will of God.
Why can't God carry out judgment using people? Explain that for us.
What do you mean, why can't God?
Why can God not carry out judgment using people in the way he does using a flood or fire from heaven?
No, I'm not saying he doesn't.
And that's my point.
And I accept that point. I accept that point.
From the
I accept that point.
God carrying out
no, I accept that point. You made a good point there. All you're saying is, from one perspective, everything goes back to the will of God. I'm saying, yeah, I accept that.
Well, that's not what I'm saying.
So no, but that's what you should be saying, because that's a more coherent way of saying it.
No, because then there are issues with that. So that's what I'm saying.
Everything goes back to the will of God. How's that issues with that? That's something consensus in Christianity and Islam.
I don't know if we would frame it that way.
So you don't think everything goes back to the Christian, the will of God?
When you say will of God, define what you mean by will of God. Are you speaking about God's desire? Or God's prevalence over all creation? What are you talking about?
When I say will of God, when I say will, I'm talking about the ability to choose A over B. I'm talking about the choice of God. I'm talking about the permission of God. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So again, God's prevalence over all creation.
No, not necessarily. That's something else. I'm talking about the will of God. God can decide A over B. God can decide this or that. That's what God can decide. That tree can be green, it can be blue. That's the will of God. It's the will of God. It's in accordance with the will of God that the tree is green. It's not accordance with the will of God that it's blue. It's not blue.
So let's say.
So nothing can be, is my postulation, nothing can be except through the will of God. That's my view. And that's the view of the vast majority of Christian scholars and the vast majority of Jewish scholars and vast majority of theists, generally speaking.
Okay, so that's fine. Instead of creation, sure, we can see that God.
So what's the point here of this?
However, when it comes to actions.
Yes. Okay. What about actions?
Are you going to say that?
This is not a Christian specific issue.
That no action can be committed without the will of God.
Yes.
Ooh.
But the difference I would say is this: is that
when you say will, you're talking about providence here. No, desire.
No action. God creates everything.
Okay.
We believe, the Muslim position. Let me tell you.
1 second. Within Christianity, we use the will of God to mean a number of things, including what God desires. For example,
with respect, you don't know what
creation.
With respect.
Pause,
go on.
For His creation and what God desires us to do.
All right.
And we use the will of God to encapsulate this idea.
Okay.
Now,
can I respond to that?
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
When it comes to actions that human beings can carry out, slavery, rape, whatever the case might be. these things are against the will of God and that it's not God's desire
Okay,
for
yeah.
us.
Oh, I understand your
However,
point. Yeah, I understand your point.
if you want to use the word will to mean purveyance, as in no action can be committed
All right.
without God allowing, permitting, or willing it to be so, that's also something a little bit different.
So we do have that distinction. We have something called irada shar'iyya.
So now you do. Okay,
no,
awesome.
no. I understand what you're saying, but we don't put it in the way. Look, we have something called irada shar'iyya and irada kawniyya, which is like you got the cosmological will and you have the legislative will.
Do you
understand?
I've heard about this recently.
Okay, so this is the cosmological will is what God allows to happen in the universe.
Okay.
Whereas the shara'i or legislative will is that God instructs people to do, and as a result of him instructing people to do that thing, okay, they either do it or not with their free will. Now, as I say, we believe in free will. Me and you both believe in free will as a concept.
Well, as a Muslim, it's a bit tricky, but sure.
What do you mean as a Muslim it's tricky? What do you think as a Christian it isn't?
No, because we
So
don't...
why do you have three distinct schools of thought?
People... No.
Why do you have Arminianism and modalism and Calvinism?
Again, these are not like massive schools of thoughts.
Yes, they are.
They're not held to by the majority of Christians.
What are you talking about? You don't even know what they are.
These are small,
What are they?
Protestant sects.
What? No, they're not.
These are not... Okay, so, for example, the schools you mentioned, can you please tell me how many Christians globally hold to the idea?
We don't really know.
Okay. Is it a majority?
Calvinism, in terms of Protestantism, it could be argued that the majority of Protestants are Calvinist. Could be argued.
I don't know.
Could be argued. But there's no survey that's been done. But what I do know is that there are institutes in America, like evangelical institutes, that do hold that position and teach it in their seminaries.
Okay.
Majority of them do.
Again, this would not constitute the majority of
I don't know. I'm not saying I don't have a sociological study. Do you have it?
So, when
but it's one of the
Islam,
in the academy. Excuse me. In the academy, Calvinism is one of the biggest and most defended positions. Clearly, 100%.
Again, I am not certain on that. I haven't done it on a survey.
William Lane Craig he defends the Molinist position, for example, yeah, and he mentions the prominence of the Calvinist position.
One dude.
No, but he mentioned. No, but from his experience as a Christian scholar, one of the greatest of his era, he's saying that actually the Calvinist position is one of the most prominent ones in Protestantism, and he argues against it.
Again,
why does he argue against it if it's not relevant?
What you're making? No, I said it was relevant. I said it was not followed by the majority.
But
of Christians.
Nevertheless, even the Molinist position.
Sunni Islam.
Excuse me. Let me just say one more point.
Go ahead.
Even the Molinist position and the Calvinist position, and even the Armenian position, to a lesser extent, I will grant, all of them have the will of God attached to them. You cannot evade the will of God.
I have not looked into them, so I cannot
so why are you commenting
on their
then?
interpretation of the will of God.
Why are you commenting
on currently is that you said that we both believe in this.
In the will of God?
No, not in the will of God, in predestination. And
Yeah,
I am
of course
telling
we do.
you that it is worse within Islam.
What's